When I started playing video games, it was a fun pastime where you connected with family and friends. Game developers were passionate. They put their heart and soul into their games because they knew if they could land a hit, they could do it again. Sometimes this is called the pinball motivation. Opinions about games were freely shared and everyone enjoyed the discussion. After all, it's just games. Sadly, this is not the world we live in today. Gaming is surrounded by division and acrimony. Sharing your opinions about your gaming preferences has become a flashpoint. So how did we get here? How did a fun hobby get surrounded by so much anger? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. I love making games. I love game developers. I love playing games. I want the industry to thrive. And in some ways, the industry is okay. There are many games that are doing just fine. But as many of you have pointed out, we also have a culture war raging around gaming, and it's destroying some of our favorite franchises and studios. There are several reasons we are here today, and like many things, what you'll find at the heart is a series of small steps by good people with a few bad actors mixed in. If you look back in gaming history, you will find that controversial content is not new. Games have always had strong narratives. This is because games start as ideas that are eventually translated into digital form. Teams start by gathering reference material from the world around them to help define what is in their mind. They pull from the lore of a franchise, sometimes history, current events, movies, other games. Games are creative dialogue on what has been and what might be, and reference material has a narrative. It has a perspective. It's easy to see this if you read a history book, because you will hear wildly different opinions on what happened based on where you grew up. Game developers naturally end up exploring themes and ideas based on what inspires them, and I would argue that's a good thing. Developers should be exploring and innovating, but they need to understand where they are. They need to understand their risk, because even though strong narratives in games hasn't changed, what appeals to the broadest audience possible has narrowed. It's easy to alienate large groups of people if expectations aren't met, and this is what I think happened with Dragon Age. They made an expensive game that didn't appeal to a large part of their current fan base. That means they lost sales, and now they have to go out and acquire new fans if they want to make their money back, or at least make enough money so that EA lets them make another game. For me, it's been interesting to watch this change in the industry. Game publishers used to put in extra effort to avoid offending people. They wanted to make games that would appeal to the broadest possible audience. Microsoft, for example, was very risk-averse. I remember when Terminal Reality was doing the second version of their game Fury Cubed, and they wanted to call it Hellbender. Well, marketing was upset. They were worried that putting the word hell in the name of a game next to the Microsoft logo was going to damage the brand. And so that team had to go to Bill Gates in order to get approval. I experienced this caution personally when I was producing the game Fighter Ace. I was asked to demo it at a Microsoft shareholders meeting. During rehearsal, I said that I was going to jump in the game and shoot down some people. Everyone freaked out. The executives thought that language was too edgy for Microsoft shareholders, and instead they asked me to say I was shooting at targets. Then there was that time we were in the final days of making Deadly Tide and someone noticed there was a problem. You see, if you slow this down and you look closely, you'll find that New Zealand was just left off the world map. Of course, Microsoft New Zealand noticed and asked us to fix the problem. But after a lengthy discussion, the team decided to pass. They didn't think people would notice, and if they did, Microsoft could just tell them it's sunk in this fictional world. There was also that time when all the Microsoft distributors in Turkey were arrested because Encarta 95 had released with a map that included an area for Kurdistan. That one did get fixed. Of course, Microsoft was a good company. They didn't want people getting arrested, and they knew they couldn't expect game developers to be well-versed in geopolitical issues. So they started hiring. They hired a group of localizers and created an entire group to help the product teams be sensitive to those issues. You couldn't have a game developer putting the Microsoft brand at risk. After having those experiences, I'm baffled about some of the things I'm seeing today. Did any of the executives at Ubisoft question whether or not doing Assassin's Creed Shadows was a good idea? I've been to Japan many times. I've worked with Namco as the producer on Revenge of Arcade, and during Xbox, I managed a team there. I love the people and the culture, and based on that experience, I would never have agreed to do this game because even if you handled it as delicately as possible, it's easy to make a mistake. And I think they have. The game isn't even out and it's already mired in controversy, and this isn't what you want for your game. Maybe it'll blow over and they'll be able to navigate this. But if not, that was a very expensive experiment. I had a similar situation when I was in the final months of shipping Crimson Skies. One of the team pitched a game that was like Sonic, but instead of a hedgehog as the main character, they wanted it to be a totem pole. A few of us playfully nicknamed him Tommy. The pitch was great. The game sounded like it would be a lot of fun, but I said pass. You see, there is symbolic meaning behind totem poles, and even with good intentions and great care, I wasn't convinced we could navigate that complexity. Also, Xbox was just kicking off and we had more than enough on our plate. We didn't need to take on more risk. It's funny because I thought everyone was in agreement, but when I went to work on Xbox full-time, I found out that the team went ahead and spent thousands of dollars to further investigate the idea and decided it was too risky. I wasn't upset about the differing opinions regarding direction. Good teams disagree all the time, but when the decision is made, they get back to work, and if they can't, well, they need to leave the team. We called it disagree, but commit. Of course, not everyone followed the principle, but those were the expectations. In fact, I remember when I was in the final stages of shipping Gears of War, we had one leader that didn't think the game was going to be successful, and he was going around to the team and telling them that we were doomed to fail. There were several problems with this situation. The first is that all of our data showed that Gears was definitely going to do well if we could finish the game at decent quality. Reviewers loved it, external playtesters loved it, the test team loved playing it. All signs were good. The second issue was that he was killing morale. At the end of Gears, several of the people on my team left their families and temporarily relocated to North Carolina to help the game ship. It is really difficult to be away from your family and trying to finish the game and have someone telling you that you're doomed to fail. And the last issue is that he was showing poor leadership. When you are leaders on a team, you go to a room, you hash out your disagreements, and then you try to leave those disagreements in the room. You try to bring a united front out to the team. One day I get a call from Epic because someone on my team is actually there and crying in the hallway. And this is why, because this person is being so divisive. It turns out that he had had a disagreement with someone on the team at Epic. And he was upset with them. He couldn't let it go. And he wanted me to remove that person from the team. Of course, there are situations where it would have made sense to have that conversation. But wounded feelings this close to ship wasn't one of those. I also explained a hard truth that management would likely replace everybody on our team before they would replace Epic. You see, they were the creators. They were the talent. We were important, but we were there to support them. And that made us more expendable. I was trying to be honest with him and help him see the situation, but it didn't work. He continued with his negativity, but he just hid it better. He also added me to his list of complaints. It's kind of funny how I found out that he was still mad. I have this weird habit that drives people crazy. I tend to fidget when I'm thinking. If I have a pen in my hand, I'll click it. If I have the mouse in my hand, I'll click on the screen, I'll highlight text, I'll unhighlight it. Well, one day I was reading an email from him, clicking away, highlighting random text, and I saw that there was a paragraph of invisible text at the bottom. It was invisible because it was white text on a white background. Of course, it was mean and it hurt my feelings, but I didn't get mad at him. I empathized with him. I know sometimes it's really hard to control your emotions. So instead of grabbing that ball of anger and sending it right back at him, I decided to let it go. That said, I didn't drop the issue, which was his destruction of team morale. I just let my personal hurt go and instead focus my energy on supporting the team and the game. I decided to show him through my actions a better way to lead. I feel fortunate that social media wasn't a thing then. I would have been devastated if he had taken his feelings publicly, which is what appears to have happened recently at Obsidian. If you haven't heard, the art director of the game Avowed, which is set to ship early next year, decided to post some comments publicly about his game. Apparently there are pronouns in the game, and Elon Musk reacted on X saying that having pronouns in a fantasy video game is utterly unacceptable. To which the art director responded, I wanted so badly to make him mad with my game, and I cannot believe it actually happened. Just wait until you see the default, you said little shit. I personally find this situation baffling. Does he know Elon personally? Why does he want to make Elon mad with his game? Why would you say this to someone who is easily one of the most controversial people on the planet, and therefore has millions of people reading his posts? This interaction may be the one impression that people will ever have of the game Avowed. To be clear, I'm fine if Elon ends up not buying it. That's his choice. What I'm not fine with is a leader putting his team and game at risk. And this is where social media comes in. At any point, you can read something, get offended, and with one emotional outburst online, you can change your game's momentum. You can ruin years of a team's work. Of course, Avowed is likely going to be review bombed. There are plenty of people that are more than happy to join in the fight. Avowed is now mired in controversy, and when they launch, they will have to overcome this situation. And that's the tragedy, because it sounds like it might be a great game, and it's heartbreaking to think that it may never get a chance. I feel sorry for the team that's working on the game, because having all of this going on while you're trying to final a game, it's not fun.
So it turns out that not only will I be the one who will know as first which game wins tonight, but I actually also know which game is going to win next year, the year after, and the year after. Now, how do I know this? Well, an oracle told me. She said, change is coming.
If you're wondering why I'm optimistic, it's because I believe in people. I think that there are only a few people who are causing this divisiveness. It is not the majority. Most people want things to be better, and so they will be. And I believe we will eat that elephant together, one bite at a time.
They knew that if you put the game and the team first, the revenue will follow. They were driven by idealism and wanted players to have fun. And they realized that if the developers didn't have fun, nobody was going to have any fun. They understood the value of respect, that if they treated their developers and players well, those same developers and players would forgive them when things didn't go as planned. But above all, they cared about their game because they loved games. And the game of the year is Astrobot!